about Luka. Now, there are good things and there are bad things. The good thing, of course, is Luka was named an all-star starter yet again. 5th time he's made the all-star team. 4th time he's been an all-star starter. He joins Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LeBron, KD, and Jokic. And that's a big deal. But it feels like it doesn't matter right now because of the problems of the team and potentially the problems of Luka himself. Is that fair? Am I fair to just kind of gloss over this? Because I do know that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, it stinks that we are in a way, but I'm tired of his individual accolades. And I know there's only so much he can do. I'm not trying to take a shot here, but Derrick Jones Jr. is a starter on the Dallas Mavericks. Yeah. I think if you look at, and he's played above expectation. Sure. He literally looked like a non-contributor in the NBA, probably going to play 5 years in Europe or so to finish out his career. And he's not. He's found a home here. I don't want to say he's flourishing here, but he's found a way to be an NBA basketball player in a rotation. But, like, it's tough because I'm like, I want now the team accolades to come with this, or at least look like you're close, because we can go back to Michael Jordan or LeBron James. And I know that's maybe not fair to compare Luka to that. I totally get it. But at this point in Michael Jordan's career, you knew he had to get over the Pistons. It was one team. Like, literally, how does he get over the Pistons / his team get over the Pistons? LeBron James, at this point, he had made it to the finals, but you're like, all right, Detroit's in his way too. How does he make it past Detroit and Boston, right? It was early Detroit, and then when he started thinking, I might need to leave here, it was Boston he couldn't overcome. But it was just one team in the Eastern Conference that both those guys couldn't overcome. Kobe had Shaq, so it was a little bit easier for him to advance quickly in his playoff career, that he had the best player in the NBA on his team. So I just start looking at Luka and go, it's great. You know what? He's on pace to be first team All-NBA again. Literally no player, I think, in the history of basketball in their first 5 or 6 seasons has made first team All-NBA every year but their rookie year. Like, he's doing individual things that we should probably be pretty darn proud of. But I think we're getting to the point, like, will he ever accomplish a team goal?
Yeah.
It's too late, Kevin. I'm sorry. It's too late to do anything about his attitude. He's already who he is. He will not change. And even if he says, I'm going to change, it's not going to happen because he's had opportunities to prove it. And there have been stretches this season where he's like, I'm not messing with the referees. I'm not doing anything there. And then look, man, bam, just like that, he's back at it again. So I don't think there's anything the Mavericks can do. They just either deal with it or find a way to move on from it. But if you move on from that, your talent level on this team is atrocious.
Okay, I'm glad that you said that, because there are people like, for example, from the 469. Can we admit Luka's a crybaby and needs to start getting back on defense? I mean, admit it, sure. I feel like we've actively talked about it. But to Corey's point, do you think that's going to change right now? Let's go off the assumption that it doesn't.
Okay.
Then what do you do? Because Corey said, and that's why I was intrigued with this whole thing, because you saw it all day yesterday. You saw it on social media the night before. Oh, I'm so tired of Luka doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so what would you like to be done about it? Because I think I'm in the Corey camp where I'm like, there's nothing you can do about it except hope that different coaching, proper coaching, however you want to put that, or maybe more maturity comes along and it solves itself. Because the other method, that's a very scary world if you're like, I don't want to deal with it anymore, and this is what we're going to do about it.
And I'd like to add this, too. I think you had the right coach to get into him and correct it a little bit, but he couldn't win against Luka. He even said it. Rick Carlisle was like, I can't beat the superstar.
I have to leave. There's an opportunity in Indiana, and I know Luka doesn't want me to be his coach. And the player always wins in that situation.
Yes.
I would say this is the scary thing for me, is
if they're good enough.
True.
If you just take some rando, they're like, well, too bad.
Samaki Walker is not getting a coach kicked off the team. If I look at it this way, and he's better than I think all 3 of these players, but he's going down this path. And in order, Adrian Dantley in the 80s, didn't like any of his situations. And he wanted to score 30. He wanted to be the focal point. And even when he got on a championship team in Detroit, he's like, this is my team, not your team. They're like, we're sorry, Isaiah's better. We're shipping you to Dallas. And then you have Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony, honestly, I didn't know if it was the right pick at the time to take LeBron James because this freshman from Syracuse was unbelievable. Led a team to a national championship back when college basketball still had players that were, older than 19 as the best players in college basketball. And you're just like, man, I get it. LeBron looks everything, but this guy actually accomplished something. And then you saw, in a way, Carmelo was a very selfish NBA basketball player who didn't seem to be satisfied with things going on. And now recently we've had James Harden in the last 5 to 10 years come along and be a guy you're like, dude, he is great, but it doesn't seem to lead to any team success. It doesn't seem to push players around him to become the best we've ever seen. Now, I could be wrong with that because obviously Derek Lively is flourishing here as a rookie. I don't know if he'd be flourishing in Oklahoma City. That was, the 10th pick who you traded with. Let's just say he was drafted there. I'm not sure if he would be flourishing there. And as great as Shea is, I don't know if he'd flourish the way he is here. Derek Jones Jr. isn't an NBA basketball player at 3 different stops. Now he is with the Dallas Mavericks. So I may be wrong to say he doesn't help players become better, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of team success here. And maybe I'm blaming the wrong person. Maybe I should be blaming Mark Cuban because he probably has more to do with it than Luka, but Luka doesn't seem to help either.
That's the thing. Well, I guess usually what I would say is I agree about Mark Cuban, but that felt like an even less changeable situation. Now, I'm not so sure if that's a less changeable situation in terms of putting someone else in charge of the basketball operations. If you told me your options are you get rid of Cuban and company, get a new regime in here, and they're allowed to build the team, or you move on from Luka, hot damn, I'm taking option number 1 in a heartbeat. Because, look, we talked about this a long time ago. Mark Cuban became Jerry Jones for the Mavericks. Is you hit unbelievable heights, but the more time went on, the more you realize how little he had to do with those accomplishments and how much he was holding the franchise back. And that's where we are now. That feels really hard to dispute.
And do you think it's difficult for Mark Cuban to have a discussion with Luka about stuff? Because if he doesn't respect him either, that's a problem too.
I do, and I don't want to misspeak here. I don't think that Cuban and Luka have a great relationship. I'm not saying they have a bad relationship because people then, it's tough, right? You have to watch your words when you say this. Obviously, Cuban and Dirk became almost like best friends in a way. Like they were together. It was the Dallas Mavericks were obviously Dirk, but he loved Mark Cuban and Mark Cuban loved him. And they still, to this day, have a connection that's almost like a brother connection, which is different from owner-player that there's that. And because Mark Cuban's older, a very different personality than most people. And Luka's a lot younger now. He's 20 years younger than Dirk. And that means he's 40 years younger than Mark Cuban pretty much. About approximately. I know it's less than that, but there's not really much of a connection there. So to your point, Mark and Luka do not have anywhere near or close to the connection Dirk had. And I'm sure for Mark it's a little bit weird because he's only known one way, the Dirk way, because when he bought the team, Dirk was going into his second year, going into his third year. And so he's probably like, this isn't as fun either because the guy who is my superstar isn't really my running buddy, and he doesn't want to text me and talk to me all the time.
Okay, then I would love for that conversation to be flipped because you said, how does Mark Cuban have that conversation with Luka? I would love for Luka to have that conversation with the new crew that owns the team and says, hey, these ain't the people that can build the right team. Because I do see, it seems split right now. There are plenty of people who are like, look, he's great. I admit it, but it's never going to happen with the style that he plays. We need to move on. But then there's another contingent is he's just pissed because they can't build jack around him. I know I'm boiling that down to a shorter sentence. And I think both of those might be true. And if the other option is find different people to construct the team, well, hell yeah, I support that.
I agree with that front that the roster building is miserable. And that's part of his attitude problem too is this dude, he has been a winner and he expects to win, and he's not, and that's frustrating to him.
I think what's not frustrating to him, though, is this, because I agree with what you said, but it's weird. This is where Luka contradicts himself, from what I understand. Luka loves it here, because I thought he wouldn't, and I thought that after last year, there could start be rumblings of this isn't the place for me. And maybe that will come about later in his career, but right now, from what I understand from people inside the NBA, who I will say, like an agent, not Luka's agent, not a big-time agent, but from somebody that I know, that Luka loves it here. He's in total control of this organization. He loves Maxi Kleber. He loves Dwight Powell. In fact, in a way, now he did love Dorian Finney-Smith, and he okayed that trade to trade him away for Kyrie. Is Luka and Bill Duffy, his agent, somewhat control this organization? And Luka can do anything he wants. This is Luka's team, Luka's organization. Luka has nobody to answer to in this organization. He doesn't have to answer to Mark Cuban. He doesn't have to answer to the new owners. He doesn't have to answer to Nico. In a way, he really respects Jason Kidd, but Jason Kidd has a really tough role that maybe Jason Kidd can't be himself because he's dealing with such an over-emotional player that he has to take his emotions and go, I can never be emotional because it will just validate how crazy Luka is. And I can't validate how crazy he is emotionally. So I have to suppress all emotions to make sure that he doesn't think it's okay to use all of these emotions in such a negative way. So I do think Luka likes it here. I don't think he has any thoughts of leaving here right now because I think he's concerned that he wouldn't have total control of the organization he was traded to.
I think, Kevin, when we discussed Luka, for the longest time, it was so much urgency on getting his career started fast. And I think that's where the frustrations from us as fans is the most, is it's been the same thing for him over and over. And you're like, you feel bad for him.
I do.
But then you're also like, I can't hold your hand and say everything's okay whenever you act this way. But you do feel bad for a dude that's sitting there. He is great, and the team's success is non-existent because the talent around him, and that's all we want to see as fans is them build something that can do it.
Look, I'm with you on that, and there are just so many personnel moves that it's easy to look back in hindsight. But I felt like we were ahead of some of them. Like, for example, Zach LaVine is not good enough to be on this team. That is an actual conversation. He was not good enough to be their third star behind Luka and KP. Well, let's let Jalen Brunson move on down the road. And I realize everyone's going to be like, oh, he wanted to go to New York. You max him out, might be ridiculous, but obviously he would have stayed. And we continue to do the same thing, and I am frustrated for Luka. I'm frustrated for the Mavericks. I'm frustrated as a Mavericks fan, and it's just interesting that the frustrations go a variety of different ways here.
Do you think the way he approaches referees would be different if they are successful, or would it be worse?
I don't think it would be worse.
You don't think that he would? Do you think that the referees would have, let's say he wins a couple, do you think they would have respect for him and treat him like the star? Because right now it feels like they're punishing him because of the way he's treated them since he got here.
I know this would never happen, but I would love for, like when you see a movie and you get this fancy invitation, everyone shows up to the castle. I would love for Luka to hold like a referee summit, and he sits down and he's like, hey, sorry about that.
He sends them tiff treats.
Yeah, he's like, I run really hot, and in the game, I get pissed and say things that I shouldn't say, and I'm working on that. I've been with the talking doctor, and I would love to see the rest like, okay,
you know what?
You made an effort.
We're going to give you a shot, but though you misstep one time this season, it's back to the doghouse.
Look, and that's just assuming that all referees would take that equally and be like, you know what? Good for you.
Let's send you to the free throw line every time because we know you don't like it there.
So it is interesting I guess it's interesting, but also the word I want to use is unfortunate.
Oh.
That the problems of the team, whether it's the Mavericks or the Cowboys, will have these uber talented players that you're like, I don't know, maybe we do need to move on from them because we don't win with them. That sucks.
I mean, he loves Kleber and Dwight Powell, and he wants them here almost no matter what. So when I complain or we complain that they don't have the right big guys, Luka's kind of a main guy saying, I want Dwight Powell starting at times. Not now with Derek Lively, but in the past, I don't want this to happen. I like Maxi Kleber. And I'm not saying Maxi Kleber is not a good 10 to 15 minute a night guy on almost every NBA team, but there's things that Luka kind of wants that they do, just like LeBron. Like, hey, max out Tristan Thompson, because guess what? He's my client. I'm his agent.
Yeah.
I get 4% of his deal. And he's like, I got to leave because you guys are paying Tristan Thompson max money and we don't have any money to go get these other guys. Like, we literally did exactly what you said because you're his agent, and you said if we don't do this, you're leaving. So now you're leaving because we did do it? And he's like, damn right I am. You don't have enough money.
Interesting note about LeBron is he surpasses Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most All-Star game appearances ever or selections ever with number 20.